Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good night, depending where you are. Today we're going to talk about Frontend Fundamentals. I'm going to host it again today. So, what are Frontend Fundamentals? So, just to dissect on that a little bit, so those are your standard building blocks for frontend. That includes HTML, CSS, JavaScript, any frameworks that you use. So those are the foundations. We will go through today all of the foundations, fundamentals, so you can have a deeper understanding what it is, how it works, how you should utilize it with AI, without AI, so you have a clearer knowledge of all of these aspects. Starting off is HTML, and specifically Semantic HTML. Everybody should know already how to write HTML, and HTML is just tags that are structured and have different meanings behind them and why you should use them. Semantic HTML shows you how to use them and how to structure them in a way that is SEO friendly, performance friendly, and all in all, accessibility friendly. So those are the main points here. So document architecture. The first things first is hierarchy. Hierarchy means how we are structuring the HTML from start to finish. So every HTML file has to have a head and a tail. In this case, head would be the header in the main component, and the tail would be the footer. You will use main for all of your content. In the header, you have your logos, your navigation links, your menus, anything of that sort goes in the header. In the footer, you have like closing remarks on that page, so that would also probably include like a logo, like some of the links, pages of your website that are linked in the footer. Main component or main tag is basically all of the content that you wish to showcase on your website. So that would be like a hero image, like carousels, sliders, referrals, recommendations, anything that you can think of, it's there. Then we jump into content. So content is directly correlated to the main tag. So those are your sections, articles, anything text related, so anything through H1 to H6, paragraphs, links, so A tags, buttons. So that's everything that should be included within the main tag. And AI context. So I can't stress enough, AI doesn't know everything, and it happens to hallucinate quite often. So if your code base has a messy HTML structure, it's going to try and copy that messy HTML structure into the new AI generated code. So first things first, you have to clean up your HTML so that AI can have a greater context and continue using the well-structured HTML instead of shipping something sloppy. Interactive intent. So these are all of the elements that have some sort of interaction on them. So first things first, it's A tags or anchor tags, however you want to call them. They are navigation URLs. So you put a link or a URL on that A tag, and it should lead you to a different page, whether it's an internal page on your website or an external page that you're referencing on your website. You have buttons. Buttons are most commonly used within forms. If you have any sort of form on your website, you will have a submit button or a post button or something along those lines, and you have to ensure that the button has the type button on it. That's something that you can't go with. So you have to have that because of accessibility. And then you have labels. So these are just general labels that you will use probably on some input fields within your form, so you can reference something. So if you have an input field for the first name, you will have to have a label that's going to reference that. So it's going to say label first name, for example. I don't know if you can see the picture quite well from your side, but this is something how a well-structured HTML should look like. So everything there is the best practice on how an HTML file should look like. I have attached this to the dashboard, so you have these files to reference to see how it looks like. But from this view, you can see you have the body tag, so everything is inside of this body tag. You have the header, you have the main, and you have the footer. In the header, you have a div that's just there, basically, and then you have like an untitled list with list items that are anchor tags. You have as well a button that's gonna, yeah, you have a button there. Then you move down to the main. If you can't see anything on the screen, if it's too, I'll try to increase it like this. So on the main, you have your ID, your tab index, and whatever else. You can write there anything you want, but main is the main content of your website. And then you have the footer. Moving on, we have the incorrect implementation. Most of the times when AI doesn't receive a well-structured input, or it has a bad reference point, it starts to use a lot of divs. The divs are building blocks that are basically universal, but you shouldn't use a lot of them if you have the opportunity to use something else. So for example, here you have the div class branding element that's called dev portal. That could have been an H1, H2, H3, doesn't matter, but it could have been an H tag instead of being a div. For the links container, you can see that that the incorrect implementation is somebody is using a span, and he's probably using JavaScript to create an anchor link out of a span. So we shouldn't use that if we already have something from HTML that works quite well and is the industry standard. For content body, instead of using main, it is using div. Then again, the title bold, instead of using a div, instead of using an H tag, it's using a div. The subtitle as well, it's using a div. So in your implementations, try to avoid using divs as much as possible and use semantic HTML wherever possible. That's the main thing that you have to take from here today. CSS and layout. So HTML is considered a skeleton of any website, and it's mandatory to know if you want to start working with web development. How you structure that and how you want to make it pretty and more stylized is with CSS. So CSS, also known as cascading style sheets, is basically complementary to HTML, as it can as you can modify directly on tags, directly on classes, or on IDs. CSS is, I mean, without CSS, you won't have any modern websites, so you won't have any transitions, you won't have any Pseudo classes, you won't have basically any color or anything without CSS. CSS is also mandatory if you're willing to build something on web development. Two main points for CSS when it comes to layouts is Flexbox and CSS Grid. Flexbox is good for one-dimensional layouts. So that would be something like an image and text, for example, or if you're using a text field and a text field, or text and a form. So something one-dimensional that's going to go into a line. You have multiple things that you can work with Flexbox. So you can have your directions, you can have your gaps, whatever you're using here. Try to avoid using margins to have the gap between them, because you have a CSS selector that's called gap, and you can use that quite effectively to make everything responsive. CSS Grid is for two-dimensional layouts. So what that means is you have a whole page, but some of the elements have to be different sizings and have to have different positionings. That's when you use CSS Grid, and you use column layouts. So you can have multiple layouts, multiple columns within one layout, but you can have much more. You will be much more flexible when using this for styling. Modern layout engines. So this is just basically pseudo classes and what you have to take care of if you're using AI to build something for you. So most of the time, AI doesn't add hover effects on buttons, on input fields, on links. That's something that you have to think of, and you have to prepare yourself to go through when building out something with AI. So what is hover? Hover is basically, so when you're on a website on your desktop and you move your cursor alongside or on a specific button, the button should do something. It should be reactive. So it can change colors, it can bold, it can increase in size. Anything is possible. You have animations, you have a lot of things that you can work on. But hover is like, if you don't have hovers on your website, that's a dead giveaway that it's an AI generated website. Also, a good point to mention here for hovers is they have a selector called transition. So if you want those smooth transitions between colors or changing texts or something like that, or underlining something in those regards, you have to have transitions. And the transition element is never added under the hover. So it's always added on the main parent class. So if we have, for example, a class called button, we have to have a transition there, not on the hover effect. I have added examples of good CSS and bad CSS as well on the dashboard, where you can download it and check it out within your IDE. Focus visible is one of the main pseudo classes used for accessibility. So whenever somebody who doesn't have a mouse or can't use a mouse and he has to use a keyboard or something like that, whenever they click on tab and the element is selected, the focus visible appears. So most of the time, that's just a colored outline within your theme that you're gonna reference. But this is highly impactful for accessibility. If you don't have these, you can't consider your site accessible to everyone. Disabled, so this changes the cursor by default to like an X sign, or the sign that you can see on the screen right now. Why it's good? If you're writing, for example, JavaScript code that has some logic behind it when you click on a button or a link or something like that, and you don't want users to have excessive clicking on that button, you will add the disabled pseudo class to that element. It will prevent them and let them know that this isn't clickable anymore, or it will be clickable within a certain time frame. But this is also crucial when building with AI. AI doesn't add this unless you specifically tell him to add this pseudo class to buttons or any functionality that could call an API. If you don't add this and you just leave it blank and you have no way to tell the user that this is disabled, there is a huge chance that you would run into rate limiting, and it could impact your cost and whatever if you're using a paid API. So just keep this in mind when building. Box sizing. So this is basically non-negotiable thing in frontend. So most of the time we use box sizing. So this is for elements that we want to have a strict layout. So if we've set, for example, a max width for this whole entire main tag of 1,400 pixels, if elements are using box sizing, they will adhere to paddings, to margins within that width. If they're not using that, there is a chance that you will have overflown elements outside of that box sizing, and it can just be a nightmare to make that responsive. So keep in mind when building, try to use box sizing as much as possible. There are some niche cases when you don't need it, but in general, you should be using this. JavaScript core. So if HTML is the skeleton and CSS is the beauty, JavaScript is the logic here. So all of your elements, everything that you've built has to have some sort of logic behind it. Some of the logic is already handled within HTML, but if you need excessive logic like API calling and data fragmentation and whatever else that HTML doesn't cover, you should cover with JavaScript. So JavaScript is a script language. It is built for the web and only for the web. It has gone through many iterations throughout the years. It was meant to be a lightweight script language, just to add simple details on the website, simple interactions. But as time progressed and more developers started adopting it, it kind of blew up, and that's why we have a lot of frameworks that use the vanilla JS inside of them, and they've kind of modified it so it's easier for users to use. So that's something like Vue.js or AngularJS or React.js. So a lot of those are just like, let's say, upgrades from the old JavaScript that has been used. For JavaScript in React, we have three things that we should cover here, and these are probably the most important foundations for JavaScript. It's destructing. So I'll try to explain this in real life examples, so you kind of get the big picture behind it. So just imagine that, for example, you went on eBay and you want to order, I don't know, whatever. You order parts for your mobile phone, let's say like that. And then the shipping carrier delivers you a huge wooden box, and inside of that you just have a couple of things. So what destructing is basically ripping apart that data, that information that you've got, and just taking what you need. So destructing is really, really important if you want to keep your component signature light, safe, and readable. So you have to use this within your code. Then we have literals. Let's say this is, in a real world example, this would be, imagine you have a newspaper and you start cutting out the different texts and then kind of gluing them to the paper and then making sentences out of it. This kind of eliminates that. It's string templates allowing embedded expressions and multi-line strings without like the messy plus signs for adding those strings together. And you should be using this if you're pulling data from an API and it's a long string. You should be using this instead of breaking it into different parts. And then we have arrows. Arrows are basically functions. This is a compact function syntax. How do I explain this in the least boring sense? So it's a compact function syntax that does not create its own execution context. What does that mean? So if you've created an arrow function and somewhere in the file and you want to recall it, it remembers that you already created it and what's being passed through it. So it has that logic behind it, so it remembers. Past functions wouldn't know this, so you would have to basically, on every function that you create and you want to reuse a function, you would have to bind it so it works. These are the three main components that you'll probably run into within React when you start working. So I just want you to pay close attention to this. Then we have data wrangling. Data wrangling is just how you're going to structure your data and what functions you can use to structure it. I've kind of shown only 3 here. There are multiple, but those I'll leave as a homework for you to search up and read up on it. But basically, we have the map function. So this is just, as it says on the screen, transforming API data into UI components, but it's more than that. It takes an array of the same exact length, and it can transform any item within it basically uniformly. So what does that mean in an example case? That would be, imagine you have a store running and you set up a Black Friday 10% sale. You could use the map function to fetch all of the items that are within that sale, and you can attach the discount to every item uniformly. You don't have to pick apart the object or whatever. You just plop it in and it works. Then you have filter. Filter is pretty self-explanatory. Its main use is for search capabilities, and also if you, for example, you have an e-commerce store and you have filters, these will take an array, an object, or anything along those lines, and it's going to push out everything that's not correlated to that object. So if, for example, you're an electronics store and I just click on a filter that says mobile phones, it's going to remove all of the keyboards, all of the desktops, all of the laptops. It's just going to leave the mobile phones. That's how it works in principle. And then we have the reduce. So this will take an entire array of multiple items and condense it down to just one single final value. So that could be a number, a string, or even like an object. These 3 things will most probably come up when you start building your capstones. So I would take great care of this as well, because you don't have to right now you don't have to write complex functionalities just to filter something, or you already have those functionalities built in within JavaScript. Then we have the async full mastery, and this will probably be the most important thing within JavaScript for you guys, because you're going to work with AI and you're going to call APIs for the AI to make some decisions and so on within your code. So we have 4 basically states that are pretty important. So we have promises, async await, fetch API, and try catch. I'll try to explain this also with an example, because I think it's going to be easier for you to understand. So let's take the example from before. Imagine you're on eBay and you want to buy a keyboard off of eBay. You add it to cart, you go to checkout, you go through all of that checkout process. You click on order. When you order that, you will get an email confirmation or a receipt or something. Well, that's basically the promise in this. Promise is basically placeholder data that you will utilize within your project, and it's gonna change out when the API call is successful. So that's kind of the same thing with the receipt here. So you've ordered something, but you don't have it physically in your hands right now. But as soon as it gets there, the receipt, you'll throw it out probably, and you'll keep the keyboard. Async await. So you've ordered the keyboard. So instead of going outside and waiting for the delivery truck to come and give you your keyboard, you can just basically asynchronously set yourself up that everything else can run, everything else can work until the delivery truck goes there. That's the same for the website. So when you have something under async await, everything else after that can run normally if you allow it to, until the data is pulled. So you won't have any delays on loading speed or delays on fetching data. So everything else would look pretty much naturally while you're still fetching data from that API. Fetch. So this is basically the delivery truck going to your house and delivering the keyboard to you. Same goes for code. So when you call or fetch an API, everything that you get from that would be considered fetch. Main point here is, and like main remark here is, the fetch function is pretty much always going to pass, even if you have like a 404 error, so not found, or like a forbidden error, or access denied, or server error, like whatever, it's gonna still pass. What you have to take into consideration here is always check for the response OK, because if you don't have that, you won't have interactive UI, and it's not gonna be pretty. So you have to always look for the response OK. And then we have the try catch methods. How this works: so the delivery truck is coming to your place to deliver this, and in the middle of the way they figure out, I forgot to bring the keyboard with me. So try catch works in a similar principle. It will try and finish up the function that you wrote out, but if for whatever reason something fails within that function, it will go to the catch method instead and try to do the plan B. So that would be probably something like error handling, or it can show no fields found or something along those lines. I've also included this on the dashboard. You have examples of good JavaScript and bad JavaScript as well. That's about it for the Frontend Foundations live. If you have any questions, I'll gladly answer them as much as I can. How would we add 3D objects? Well, most of the time, you will use third-party resources instead of building them with code, and you're just going to implement them. But I'm going to leave this topic to Belmin, who's going to cover it in the following weeks. So stay ready for that. We have to work on Capstone project from now. So it would be good for you to start, have an early start and have enough time to prepare everything. Even if you don't push it to, let's say, a production link right now, you should probably sit down and think about what you want to do and how you want to do it. Are there any other tricks that we might use to build our websites? Well, to be honest, there is a lot of libraries, frameworks. People have created websites with like millions of buttons, button styles, loader styles. Like you can find anything online basically, so you don't have to think about it as much as you had to before. You have way more accessibility right now. So as a trick, I'd I'd always go with a good structure. So start out structuring good, have at least a general plan in mind when creating the website, and just start from there. You'll probably have a million ideas as you start building, and you want to change this, you want to add this, you want to remove this. I don't, that's kind of like a personal touch, so I'll leave you to decide on that. But yeah, you have a lot of websites and libraries that you can probably utilize. Like for example, for sliders, you don't have to create like a full function for sliders. You can just use, for example, Swiper.js, and it has all of that swiper functionality. It has demos and everything that you can check and see what you want to use there. I'm learning JavaScript right now. Should I be learning code or understand concepts like the async await now that AI can handle 99% of the code? So I'm a strong believer that AI can't handle 99% of the code. It can help you out, but it still can create bloat. It can create messy functions. It can create something that isn't functional. So from my opinion on this is you should probably still learn how JavaScript works and what you can use, because if you have the knowledge on what you need, you can easily prompt AI to make it for you. So you will have more excessive and more descriptive prompts instead of just saying, hey, build me this. how to deploy the Capstone project? Is it from Google Console? Actually not. So you will deploy your Capstone projects on GitHub. You will use Git to connect with GitHub, push all of the changes and everything onto GitHub. So uh, you have versioning. You can always version back or see what changes someone made, and it's going to be easier for us to look at it. To deploy the Capstone project, because this is front end and mainly front end, I'm suggesting you use Vercel. Vercel is free, so you can still work on it. It's gonna have its production link that you can share. It has already the CI/CD and pipeline, so you don't have to think about that. It connects directly to GitHub, to the repository. The only caveat is on the free plan, uh, only you can work on it. So it's kind of a good and bad thing if you think of it. But yeah, that you should probably use Vercel for deploying the Capstone project. Can we do Capstone project in group or two-person? I'd suggest not. Honestly, I think you're gonna learn a lot more if you work alone. If you can always chat with other people from the cohort and ask for suggestions or something like that, and you have these live chats, and I see you guys typing away. But please work on it alone, because it's gonna be more beneficial for you. If you get a job after this, that second person may not be there to help you out. So it's better for you to understand how to build this and have the general idea on how to build websites. What are requirements regarding Capstone project? So requirements wise, I've talked about it on the meet and greet last week, but we haven't set up anything from a requirement standpoint. You have to create, the only requirement is you have to create a website. What you're going to build and what niche is going to be, or theme or whatever, that's totally up to you. If you want to use React, Vue, Angular, whatever, or even vanilla JS, it's up to you. You have the full capability to do anything you want on that. What we want in the end for the Capstone project, it should be functional. It should pass all of the tests. So all of the QA tests, everything along those lines, and it should be responsive. I can't stress that enough, but all of the websites in modern website development have to be responsive. It can't be just a desktop website or a mobile desktop. It has to be across all screen sizes. How complex or easy can the Capstone project be? I mean, it's up to you. You have 9 weeks to build it out. So I would say fairly complex. It doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking or anything, I don't know, really hard for beginners. But I think you should try to focus and build out something. And as you're building, you're probably going to figure out that you want to add something else. So I'd rather say go more complex than easy. Can you please explain this task, React front-end development with AI from prompt to working feature? This isn't the task. This will be probably a pre-recorded session from Ishak, who will share you how to use React with AI, and he will give you at the end an homework assignment, and you will have that as an assignment on that week. So that's next week. What week is this of the internship? It's week 2. I can answer a couple more and then we should hop off. Do we just follow now the assignments week by week? Yeah, I'd suggest that. I don't want you guys to go into the other weeks if you're not feeling prepared, because every week from like week 1 to week 8 will have some kind of either live session or a pre-recorded session that's going to help you tackle some of these things and give you more understanding so you can focus on other on the Capstone project. Any ideas for complex projects? Well, complex projects could probably be like something really interactive 3D, like something along those lines from just a front-end perspective. I don't want you to, I mean, you can if you want, but you don't have to bother yourself with full stack projects. So probably like I would have, if you want to do something complex, probably avoid just a simple portfolio or like simple info website. Try to make something interactive, quizzes, whatever, like so it has a lot of interactivity and you have a lot of clicks on that website. Does this will be the last question for today. Does each week assignment has any due date or we have flexibility? You have flexibility, so this is a self-paced internship. You have flexibility to work on it, whether this week or next week, but by the end of the cohort, you should have all of the assignments done, if that makes sense. Okay, guys. This would be it for the Frontend Foundations live session. I want to wish you a happy week, nice week ahead, and be productive. Try to work on these things. If you have any questions or anything, you can write in the comments of this video. Most probably someone from our team will answer them. So yeah, that should be it for today. Have a nice day, guys.